Well, here it is. After a lot of teasing in the client and after a lot of creepiness hovering around, Riot revealed Briar through her cinematic, they gave us all of her abilities, they even gave us her lore, and they also gave us a post talking about her design. Be ready for a lot of funny phrases from that one. But you see, even though Briar's reveal has been pretty cool overall, many people can't shake the feeling that it could have been better, that it should have been better. And in my opinion, those people are right. There is a very good reason why the reveals didn't land as well as they could have. Why it wasn't as mind-blowing as it should have. And that's because we kinda already knew what she looked like because, you know, all the leaks, which absolutely ruined the pacing of her teasers. But at least now, the cat is out of the bag and we can talk about everything. From how Riot intended to tease her, to how people like her revealed personality. But speaking of cats, don't forget that the evil genius Felix the Cat plushie is available for purchase right now! If you'd like to support this channel directly, remember that this plushie will be only available for 1 more week. After that, it's gone! We may also sell out before then, so be quick. Now back to questionable vampires. Can you imagine if Briar didn't leak? Can you imagine the roller coaster that would have happened? For those of you who don't know, throughout the last week, after logging into the live client, you could have seen a new tab that was a personal page that would tease Briar. At first it showed a prison cell somewhere inside the Immortal Bastion. And every day the camera moved closer to Briar's cell. But the cool part was, it was interactive. By just clicking around, you could have triggered different animations. And let me tell you, things got really creepy here. For example, this was the first stage of the teaser. What a creepy atmosphere. Again, imagine if nothing leaked and we had no idea what Briar would look like. This would trigger quite a few speculations. The next day we got closer and suddenly we could see Briar walking around. The stellar part of this one was the sound design. It really sold the horror vibes. But then, Briar also spoke.
Hello! Hello? Hello?
And that's when some people got a bit nervous, because they didn't seem to be a horror-based character after all. Though some people still remained hopeful. Maybe she was just playing at being cute and the shrieks of horror would come later when she's freed. The next day the camera got even closer and now we could see inside her prison cell. Which is when the slightly more comedic side of Briar started showing up. But at the same time, the teaser got creepy too. So again, the hope remained. This honestly just looked really cool. And then the final day arrived and we got this. Whew, that was badass. So yes, despite people's expectations, this entire thing would have been so much better if we actually didn't know what Briar looked like before. Imagine if this is what we saw the first time, without the community focusing on her feet. Though I could be wrong about that one. What a cool lead up to the reveal this would be. Especially since her reveal cinematic happens directly after this scene. So, let's talk about that one now. In this cinematic, you can see that she just ate someone through the bars. Of course, this is what happened in the latest stage of the teaser, which kickstarted her powers, which is something that will be mentioned in the lore later, and she kicks the doors out. And this is where the twist for the community happened. It's the moment everyone got divided. The moment it happened was, here. This is when some people in the community got really hyped, and others facepalmed. Because many people had many different expectations. And those who really wanted to see a creepy blood-sucking monster from a horror movie, didn't exactly get what they expected. Because instead, we did get a bit of a comedic character. In fact, to quote some people from the community, this is Jinx. It's Jinx from Noxus. Like, this is just Jinx. You don't believe me?
We fight so differently, Scion. You're like, ugh, and I'm like, nom, 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 you know?
So yeah, Briar's situation got a whole new twist. But I love how the vast majority of people fall into the same camp. It is people who got very different expectations, but who still got impressed by the reveal. And I have to admit, I am in that camp too. Back when Briar was teased for the first time, if you told me we would get a cracked up member of the Gorillas, I wouldn't believe you. Though I wouldn't believe you even if you told me we would get another Jinx. And I think that comparison is totally fair. It is a crazy delusional girl shooting crazy jokes all the time. Her main reveal is themed around punk music, though here it is more on the hard rock side. And aesthetically it was themed around graffiti. Like, yeah, I think it's safe to assume that she is kinda similar to Jinx. Is that bad? No. It would be foolish to say that Jinx is the only insane person in this universe. Especially in this universe. And there is no issue with multiple characters sharing the same traits. But was that risky? Definitely. Subversion of expectations is a powerful tool, but it is also very easy for it to backfire. Here, Riot purposefully teased a champion with unending hunger. Someone who could be classified as a vampire, which set up a champion with some kind of an inner monster. Did they lie? No, but I can't be mad at the people who expected something else. This is the very point of the subversion. In a similar way, we have heard about the Ruined King for 10 years. He's been part of the lore for a decade. And most people expected an old grumpy madman akin to Game of Thrones. So what did we get? A young, charismatic king. Was that something we expected? No. Did Viego become a good character? Yes. Though at times he bit off a bit more than he could chew. And here, I honestly believe they pulled it off really well. Yes, it is not exactly what I expected, I thought they would go further into the horror vibes. But everyone can tell in an instant this is gonna be a popular champion. Because her character is very energetic, very charismatic. It instantly grips you. And even on the visual side, feet jokes aside, it is overall a great prisoner design. And the moment she gets a drop of blood, it also gives her a great contrast within her own character. She has this socially awkward side, similar to someone like Nico, even though she is really not an introvert. And then she goes all out on her personality during her frenzy. To be honest, that is pretty cool. And even when it comes to her abilities, it all fits really well. Her passive gives her a bleed that heals her, because she is a vampire. Her Q makes her leap at her target to stun them, kinda like what horror characters do. Her W is really cool, she goes into frenzy and she can't control herself. Which means that she literally taunts herself to the closest enemy. And she'll attack them until you disable the ability. What a great idea! Her E is literally just a scream that deals damage. Again, it makes sense for her to be shrieking. And her ultimate makes her kick the gem above her head. And if she hits an enemy, she jumps at them. Gameplay-wise, it is a skill-based Nocturne ultimate. Story-wise, don't think about it too hard, okay? We'll talk about her lore in a separate video. But lastly, there is one more thing that we can mention in this video. Riot also released a dev post where they talked about how they came up with Briar. This is a really cool dev post that gives us a lot of information. But funnily enough, even though I am pretty sure it was unintentional, I think these posts have to be prepared way ahead of time because they need to be translated and that kind of thing. But they actually addressed her feet, and also some other pieces of design. At the beginning, they quickly summarized her story. They mentioned the fact that she comes from Noxus, she was created from hemomancy by the Black Rose as a living weapon. They made her sentient, though they really tried to make her motivation blood. She went out on only 2 missions, and she failed both times because the Black Rose couldn't control her. She just started killing everyone, and apparently, Briar is aware of her own failure. On her first mission, she instantly went into frenzy, so they locked her in her pillory. That's the device that was used during medieval times to restrain people. And they locked it with a hemolith, or a blood gemstone. They then sent her on her second mission, but her frenzy was still too much to handle. So the Black Rose decided she was more of a liability than a valuable asset. Eventually, she ended up being captured by Swain's forces and she was locked in her cell. But over time, she figured out how to loosen the gemstone and how to open her pillory, so that from time to time, she could feed. However, she also realized she likes her sanity, and so she is willingly staying in her pillory for as long as she can. That's really the basics of her story. She is an artificially created living weapon, whose primal instincts are to feed on blood, but she carries a device on her that actually gives her sanity. So, she likes wearing it because it actually gives her an opportunity to experience life. Overall, I have to admit, this story is pretty dope, which is where we can mention a really degenerate thing. Some people noticed that in her splash art she had the facial features of a young person, but also the body structure of an adult. And then when you look at her in-game model, she looks way older than she does in the art. On top of that, in the cinematic, she is something in between, which also confused people. Well, when it comes to this topic, in theory, we can make somewhat of an educated guess based on the story. There are 2 ways to look at this. She is a living weapon that was created by the Black Rose. We can assume that she's been in development for a few years before she got deployed the first time. She then failed, and then she got deployed the second time when Swain was taking over Noxus. Noxus itself does have some experience with using children as war assets, which would make Briar about 7 to 9 years old at that time. The thing is, if you look at the timeline around Sentinels of Light, you'll see those events happened about 9 years ago, though in the present days it should be a little bit more, which would put Briar around being 18 years old or more depending on when the present day is. But that is only theory number 1. Theory number 2 is that the Black Rose simply expedited her physical form, which would make more sense since she was literally just made from a drop of blood. So instead of literally creating an infant at the start, they used blood magic to create an adult in their prime to make a capable fighter. In this case, it really wouldn't make sense to make a child. But of course, she still doesn't age because she is not a human. She is a piece of magic tied together by the Black Rose. The only reason I'm bringing this up at all is because some people got worried about her semi-revealing design. Well, now you know that everything is pointing at the fact that she is an adult, which makes it better. Although in reality, Briar is really just a drop of blood given physical form. And even in the post, Riot also tries to confirm that she is not a child. To quote them, "The team knows she should be a champion with flaws, but not a victim. A native, but not childish. A woman, but not sexualized. Enthusiastic about life, but not annoying. So if you need more proof, you have it here. She is a woman." In the next part, the post talks about her abilities. We can safely skip this one, though we can mention the fact that at one point she did have a revive, just like Aatrox. And finally we arrive at her visual design. And this is where some unintentionally funny things happen. They talk about how they arrived at her appearance. It is all some pretty cool information that talk about how they merged her gameplay and her personality, together with her story of being a living weapon. And then we arrive at feet. Yes, her designers explained what's going on there. Here's a comment on exploring her personality. Her face and expressions show a lot of eagerness and excitement, but her feet and stance communicate her hesitance and trepidation on entering human world. And then her hands restrained at her wrist show her inner hunger. So, from the design's perspective, it's pretty clever. They chopped her silhouette into parts where each part is showing a different part of her personality. So why did the community have to make it weird? But don't worry, they got more in them. Because as you may remember, some people also pointed out her thick thighs. Well, It's kind of subtle, but with Briar's shape, I wanted to give her thicker legs and bottom half with more petite upper body. The idea here is that if she's actually made of blood magic or living blood, she should be a little bit more bottom heavy like an IV bag or the shape of a droplet of blood. So yes, she is dummy thick on purpose to make her look a little bit more like a droplet of blood. Is it working? But that's pretty much all that can be said here. Overall, I think Briar is pretty dope. The champion has actually a cool design. Her gameplay with the self-taunt seems to be very unique. Her cinematic was stellar, and her lore is pretty good. Then again, we will talk about that in the next video. And I think I can rush that one out because I don't think we are getting a color story when she comes out. I think the lore we got is all we'll get. Which is where we should really mention just one more thing. Dude, the Black Rose tried to make living weapons like 6 times in the past. Why would a crazy vampire work now?